your life, you deserve to be more, be more, do more, have more, and give more. And now the Becoming More podcast with Dianna Kokoszka.
So Lyndsey Fennelly is a former Iowa State All-American and a WNBA draftee. Since graduating as a Cyclone in 2007, she has built successful businesses, been an active volunteer in the Ames community, and has found ways to serve others using her basketball background and her leadership skills to make a positive difference. She seems to have it all in place, in person, on social media, and most especially with her beautiful family. Her husband, Billy, is an Iowa State women's basketball coach. Her son, Will, is 10 years old, and daughter, Callie, 6. However, after 3 hospital stays totaling 59 days in the past 10 years, it became clear the vision of happiness wasn't as obvious as you'd think. Since her stay in 2018, Lyndsey has shared her story and messaged to thousands, reminding them a positive outcome can be possible through awareness, acceptance, and self-love. Sit back, relax, and as she says, please pretend to listen better than her 2 children. She says it won't take much. Yet I am so excited for you to get to meet my new friend, Lyndsey. So welcome everyone with us. I am so excited about this particular podcast. I was able to meet Lyndsey in Orlando, Florida. We were at an event together, and of course, after you heard her bio, you know why I was attracted to her. Her energy, her willingness to add value, especially to kids. Oh, that just grabbed my heart and tugged at my heart, Lyndsey. And so I want everyone to know your story. Let's start out with that, about how you've become more.
Well, thank you for having me. My story started, I was originally from Los Angeles. I came to Iowa State. I played basketball here. I fell in love with the place. I fell in love with a boy. The boy becomes my husband. The tricky part to it is his dad was my college coach. So there was a little, that going on. I always tell people that's not why I was All-American by any stretch. But I fell in love with Iowa, and I really have grown up here, even though that growing up time period was from 18 years and older. And what I've experienced over the last 10 years is I've really, as publicly successful as I might appear in different businesses I've owned or in different statuses as being a former player or married into this family, the Fennellys, that have been a mainstay here in Ames, Iowa for so long. I also was really struggling, and I was struggling with a mental illness that people didn't think I almost deserved. I live in a nice house. I drive a nice car. I appear to quote unquote have it all. But it was really a challenge for me to see myself in a light that just needed help. And so over the last 10 years, I've been in a behavioral health unit, which is somewhat solitary confinement, it feels like. And I've had 3 different stays in 2013, 2018, and then again in 2023. And I call them like my reset button, where I needed to retool myself because I wasn't able to live healthy enough to do that outside of those 4 walls. And now I can say I'm in good maintenance mode. I sleep 8 hours a night. I take 4.5 pills every day. And most importantly, I see a therapist and a psychiatrist every other week. And I pour into my mental health because of my mental illness, and I couldn't be more grateful.
I love the way that we're talking about this, because a lot of people, when they go into depression or anxiety or have a panic attack, which comes from nowhere, people go, oh, just snap out of it. Come on, just snap out of it. And I heard that the word depressed, if we look at that like deep rest, instead of depressed, deep rest, because who we are being is not who we desire to be. And you were able to face that. How challenging was that for you? I mean, here you're an All-American. People are looking up to you. You're doing so much. You're a huge success. and to be able to say, I'm going to take care of myself.
You know, it feels the first word that comes to mind that I've always felt when I'm in those moments is selfish. Well, I don't deserve to not look at my phone for 2 weeks. I don't deserve to be away and sleep 10 hours a night. You know, part of the athlete mindset is you grind and there's grit and you sacrifice your sleep. And I didn't think I could be a successful business owner, a successful wife, a successful mom, even if I was sleeping 8 hours a night. Well, the real athletes train at 3 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, and that's where that mindset of, has definitely deterred over the years. I think athletes are now recognizing the importance of sleep, the importance of self-care, why, taking care of yourself is critical. And for me, I was a point guard. So it was my job to take care of everybody else. And so that's what my mantra has always been. And I'm finally learning to turn on the candle, to put on slippers, to quietly fall asleep at night without a bunch of stimulants nearby. And I can finally tell you, honestly, Dianna, I feel worthy of that. And for my 39 years of my life, I have a narcissistic family member who told me otherwise, that I was never good enough and that I had to pursue more and get on the podium and stand on the platform and be on the stage. And so I'm literally retraining my brain to be good with myself, and not just my body, but my brain as well.
You know, what I love about that is, of course, my book, Becoming More, is about retraining your brain. And so many of us really, we need to do that. Yet the world goes, oh, look at them up there on that pedestal. Look at them getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Millionaires get up by 4 a.m. And so we're fed all this programming into our mind that we're not good enough because we're not up at 4 a.m. or we're not good enough because we're not waving the banner of I'll do whatever, I'll sacrifice my health and everything else to give. When you were going through this, did you have demons to fight in your own head? I call it the devious storyteller that lives in our head.
Yeah, I have been seeking a truth based on lies that I have told myself, that I was conditioned to believe, and that I didn't realize until I recognized this individual was so unhealthy to how I was conditioned. And that's the one thing I don't quite understand about my illness. How much of it is a condition versus how much of it was conditioned, and trying to find that happy middle ground. And I'm in such a stable place right now that I'm not pursuing the answer to that, because I don't need to know the answer to that. But what I recognize is now in my own parenting, how do I create a healthy environment for my children, to believe in themselves without external validation, without constant affirmation, without needing to achieve something to believe that they're worthy and beautiful and wonderful just the way that they were made. And so that's kind of where my attention has turned, as far as my own illness, but then also recognizing how I can help my own kids.
Well, and that's so good, because a lot of parents don't understand what they are doing in programming their children, such as, oh, you got an A in math. Oh, I knew you were great in math. You're always good at math. That's one of your best subjects. What they're doing is putting a fixed mindset, because there's only so many kids that are good at math and so many that aren't, versus saying the effort you put forward, your beauty is because of the effort that you put forward in making yourself beautiful inside and out, instead of telling a girl how beautiful she is all the time, and then on social media somebody tells her she's not, right? And all of a sudden she starts believing them. I know, like being a WNBA draftee, were you fighting the demons back then as well, like you didn't deserve it?
Yeah, there was a point. I'd had such a wonderful career here at Iowa State that I didn't know how it could get any better and any bigger. Yeah. And then I get drafted, and at the time, my boyfriend and I, who again was my college coach's son, we had been hiding our relationship for 4 years, and all I wanted to be was his girlfriend once I got out of college. And so all I
Yeah.
wanted to be with him and be his girlfriend. And he went on to go pursue a college coaching career. But then I had this game I loved. But then I already felt like I had made sort of the climax, or I'd reached the potential that I truly believed I had. And so the entire time, I was only in WNBA for 5 weeks, but I questioned myself. I questioned being there. I questioned, was I good enough? And I was nowhere mentally ready to absorb that. And then what's taken place over the last 20 years is anytime I get introduced on a stage or anywhere, it's always, oh, the WNBA. And as I look back on that, it's so obvious to me. My brain and my health was telling me one thing, but that pursuit of constantly being perfect or constantly achieving more was telling me this. And luckily, I didn't make it much beyond. And the moment I could be done with the game of basketball from a playing standpoint, I ended it, started training kids the next day, haven't stopped doing it since. And I found that I could still impact others in a game that I loved, but I didn't have to play it anymore. And I think a lot of athletes experience what I call the transition time from being an athlete to now being a quote unquote regular person. You know, you're molded this way to believe this about yourself in the next game and the next scouting report. And we don't teach athletes how to lose, and we don't teach them how to always, respect their health enough to maximize that. And yet I couldn't be happier with the direction I chose and where life took me.
It's interesting because how many parents actually ask their kids, what did you fail at today? And have them talk about that so they know it's okay if you don't do something perfect. Yet as an athlete, weren't you always being told what you did incorrect, how you could improve, how to be perfect? And you had this idealistic way that you should be.
Yeah.
Now you step down, and what happens?
Well, and I think, so this is something I wanted to share today was, our son is 10. So we have a son who's 10 and a daughter who's 6. And during COVID, we asked our son, hey, what was the favorite part of your day? He was about 6 at the time. And he said it was, playing with Timmy on the playground. And then he said, but can I also tell you about, the worst part of my day? And both Billy and I, my husband, we looked at each other and he's a college coach and I'm in training, and, I work with athletes every day, and we're like, no, we are blue ribbon, top of podium, do not lose kind of people. And then I remember we were laying in bed, kind of having pillow talk, and we're like, wait, that was brilliant. And we need to honor that in our children. And so from that day forward, we've always had a best part of your day and a worst part of your day, because we don't enough talk about the losses. And it doesn't mean we stew on it. And it doesn't mean that we're feeling sorry for ourselves. And it just means we're giving the negative energy a safe space, or else if it gets suppressed and then it blows up, that's typically when my illness comes to a head, is when I act like everything's perfect and I'm hiding. And then I hit my breaking point. And so learning to get rid of that in a healthy way throughout the day has definitely been a big win, not just for us, but for our whole family.
I love what you just said, because, we hear this in the 4 agreements, don't take anything personally.
Yeah.
Yet that's a challenge. Of course, we're going to take some things personally, and eventually we get to that point where we don't take it as personal, yet we always desire to improve ourselves and have growth. Now, with you helping children, you went from the greatest success to significance. Now you're helping others find success. Tell us what you do and how that transition has helped your mental health.
Great question. First of all, I work with kids and they are our future. We've always heard that quote, you always leave your jersey in a better place. I had a mentor tell me at any moment, at any time, you could change the trajectory of a young person's life. And I get to do that on a basketball court. So today after school, I'll have kids show up. My dream was to have a gym in my house. And so I built that over the last year and a half with my husband. And kids show up, they come to a training session, they work on basketball, but it's really more life skills that I'm trying to teach them through the game of basketball. And it's just really, it's enriching, it's empowering. to see them go from here to here each session or in the middle of a drill to pick up on something. You know, I don't think we honor the joy, the beauty, the creativity of children enough. And I get to do it every day. And I get to do it on a basketball court wearing Lululemon pants. So it's for me, it's been a wonderful job. It's been a great career. I have as young as a 7-year-old. I have as old as an 18-year-old. I have girls, I have boys. And it works really, really well. And then I have a gym about 10 miles away from here where athletes can go access on their own. And so anytime they want to go shoot by themselves, they can just use a little key code they have on their iPod or iPad or iPhone, and it buzzes them in, and then they can go shoot and train on their own. And so that was my way of saying, hey, I'm gonna build a gym for me at my house, but I'm also gonna make sure that I have one that kids can access, because I think it's so damaging that we as adults run around and say, get off your phones, you're on your social media too much, but we don't provide them a healthy outlet of what to do with their time. And so littered around the entire facility are notes about, not being on your phone. And so it's kind of a cell phone free space. And sometimes kids go with friends, sometimes they go by themselves. But it gives them a chance to be a kid, and to grow and create and find themselves.
I love that. We're telling our kids what to not do, right? It reminds me of a baseball game where the coach goes out. I mean, the score is tied. It's like for a championship. And the coach goes out and says, whatever you do, don't throw a fastball.
Right.
So what do you think the guy throws? You know, it's already in his brain. We're telling him not to. The brain doesn't hear the word don't. It hears throw a fastball. So in his unconscious, subconscious mind, he winds up and throws a fastball, and the guy hits a home run and they lose the game. That's always reminded me of so many adults telling kids what not to do instead of reversing that and being positive on what to do. Now, the kids that come, you said that they're from young to old. You remind me of Coach John Wooden, who said, I teach them life skills, and basketball comes along with it. Do you ever use his success triangle or anything from other coaches?
Oh, a ton. I don't have it right in front of me, but I have John Wooden's Pyramid of Success hanging up. I had a chance I was about 24 years old. So about 15 years ago, I had breakfast with John Wooden, before he passed. I had the chance to go to his apartment, similar to what we heard with, obviously John Maxwell having a very close relationship with him. But yeah, I got to see his apartment, how he wrote a letter to his wife who had passed of a couple years, and still wrote a letter on the same day every month. And just his meticulous approach to detail, his ability to care for others, and just his simplistic way of, we all tie our shoes the same way. And so he taught his freshmen how to tie their shoes. So I read all of John Wooden's books. I think I've read not all 90, but a lot of John Maxwell's books. I've been I say nerd, I shouldn't say that, but that's the truth. I've been a bookworm, for a long, long time. And always I would read books on football coaches, on basketball coaches, on Jackie Joyner-Kersee, the runner, anything I could get my hands on to figure out how can this person do that so well, and what could I learn from them? And so at my gym in Ames, down here in Ames, I have a library of about 250 books, and the kids know at any point you can take a book, borrow a book, and do that. So I'm gonna need to get the Becoming More book in there and get the young bucks here in Iowa reading that.
That'd be fabulous. In fact, there's a lot of schools that are having them read it, to tell them about retraining their brain, and the storytellers that live there, right? Which one are you going to empower? Now, I got to tell you, I'm jealous that you got to meet John Wooden. His success triangle, we have one signed by him. Of course, we bought it at an auction. I didn't get to meet him. Yet that is what the pyramid behind me is patterned after, on how our brain actually starts working and how we retrain it. There you go. There's the success pyramid I love that you showed that to us, because that shows me that you actually live by what you learned. And I know you're a bookworm. I mean, that's one of the things that I loved about you. And now that I know you've read all these coaching books, you and I need to stay in touch. You've been in 3 hospitals, totaling 59 days. It's been over the past 10 years, yet you have a drive. You have a passion, a love that came through when I first met you. And I was wondering what that was. And as I read your bio and I got to know you just a little bit that day that we were together, you have this passion to let the world know about mental health and how it's no different than any other health issue that we have, that it's not wrong, that it's not bad, that we need to embrace it. Tell us how we can embrace that and help people that have that illness.
I think the biggest thing is, I think back to, and I believe this is a John Gordon quote, and that is, if we love, we serve, and we care, we can't go wrong. And so I always tell people, anyone who, like here in Iowa and in the Midwest, somebody has a baby, the whole neighborhood comes together and they make meals, right?
Yeah.
And they do a meal train. I was in the hospital for 59 days, and outside of my in-laws who helped take care of our children so my husband could still do his job and whatnot, nobody made me a meal train. But I bet if I had cancer, everybody in this town,
they would have.
right? And so I think it's just looking at it as it is a lifelong illness that is not beatable, but it is treatable. And that's how I take the mindset of, I cannot win from this illness. Every day I wake up and my brain, still at 4.5 pills a day, runs with a certain level of mania that I don't think I could take 10 more pills and my brain would still function at a pretty high, constantly moving level. So I don't focus on trying to beat it. I try to focus on treating it, and treating it comes with just being consistent every day and telling the world, again, if I had another lifelong illness, I would tell everyone simply to drop the stigma and to encourage people to not carry shame or guilt with something that I am not my illness. I have an illness. And I think there's a big difference between that, and learning to live out of the shadow of that has been really, really powerful.
Like that. I really like that. I'm not my illness. So when you're going through all of this, people weren't bringing meal trains. They weren't really looking at it in a positive way, yet you put a positive spin on this. How can we speak about it to our own children or to our family about that it's not a negative, it's a positive, to discover it and to treat it?
I go back to the word truth. I live in a truth that there's a lot of people I know that are struggling mentally, that are afraid of therapy, that don't want to take medication because they feel weak, that don't want to address it because they're afraid their spouse. My husband deserves the biggest 5 stars more than anyone. He's never looked at me differently. He's never treated me differently. He's loved me in some of the ugliest, worst days of my life. And so because I have a support system that is so loving and caring and serving and so non-judgmental. And I think that's the biggest thing, is I don't walk around with a scarlet letter above my head because nobody else around me does it, but I also don't do it either. I don't feel sorry for myself. I don't, I tried to look at it as what could be gained from this. I mean, I slept more in that hospital than I probably did in years. I used to average 3 hours of sleep a night. And so just trying to find the positive in it. And I'll go back to my husband. He was born with a congenital heart defect. He's had 3 open heart surgeries and has 3 scars running down his chest. I get one September 3rd, 2024, my whole life, just like you do. And so how do we as a couple make it the best we can is sort of the approach we've always had. And I give him a lot of credit for having just a really positive outlook on anything. I mean, there's a tornado going on outside and he's standing outside taking film and footage of it, not in the basement with the kids and I give him a hard time about it, but that's kind of his personality. Like, I'm going to make the best out of my life and enjoy doing it. And he carries other people along with him, and certainly me the most. So he deserves a lot of credit, because I have friends, Diana, I have people in my life that are struggling and they can't even talk to their spouse about it because their spouse's family doesn't believe in mental illness, or because their employer is going to shame them in some way, or because their own spouse just doesn't like it. And I've had someone who's visited me every single day when I was up there and is the metronome. His heartbeat is the metronome to my life. And I'm
I love that.
grateful for that.
I really love that you honor him and respect him so much as he honors and respects you, I'm sure. With you being in the hospital and having everything going through your mind at that time, is that when you decided to help kids to, when did this yearning come inside of you that you're going to have a basketball gym for the kids to come and play?
So when I was 9, the greatest dream I ever had was to have a gym in my house. Basketball was safe for me. Basketball was joyful for me. And so when I was 9, I had that dream. And I remember telling Billy about 5 years into our marriage, hey, one day I want to have a gym in my house because that's the biggest dream I've ever had. And a couple years later, actually during my first crisis in 2013, I was obsessed about building a gym. I had just suffered a miscarriage, but I became obsessed about building a gym that kids could access, because I knew that at some point God was going to turn me into a mother. But how would I still do what I loved? How would I still be able to impact kids through the game? And so that was in 2013. I literally lost my mind, didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't drink for 4 straight days, obsessed, building the spreadsheet, building the business plan, for how I could make it happen. And for 10 years, it was always just kind of a back burner, always kind of a back burner. And about a year and a half ago, my husband was offered a head coaching job in another state. And when we turned that job down and we decided to live here, at least for the next period of time, I remember looking at him and saying, we got to do it. And if this is our home, there's more we can do for kids. And so that's kind of how it came to life. But it started 10 years ago, and was a big piece to my being in the hospital for the first time.
No, I love the fact that you give back so much. So many people, they want to have more, right? Oh, I'll buy a new car, I'll do this, I'll do that for myself. And yet here you're doing so much for other people. And your growth mindset is what attracted me to you. You're so humble. You didn't even talk about all the things that you've done or the accolades that you've had. Yet those help people as well. Have you started talking about some of those as well as the crusade for mental illness?
I have, I look at the commercials that originally were playing about depression pills, for example. And it was always somebody under covers in a dark room with the TV faintly playing in the background. And I just wanted to change the mold. And so in 2013, I was hospitalized. The gym project kind of came to life. In 2018, Mariah Carey came out, if you go back, in the April 2018 issue of People magazine. And I grew up in Los Angeles, so I read People magazine all the time because those were my neighbors.
Yeah.
And the April 2018 issue was Mariah Carey on the cover, and Brad Pitt was on there too, so that didn't hurt. But Mariah Carey said, I'm opening up about my bipolar. And that was the first time I'd ever seen someone that wasn't deranged, that wasn't suicidal, that wasn't, a gunman with an illness harming innocent children. It was the first time in the media that I had ever seen that. And I happened to be in the hospital at the time, and I was on day 10 of just experiencing a really, really psychosis and depression and mania and, hints of bipolar. And I mean, all the thing, it was an awful, awful time period. And my husband, Billy, put the magazine down in front of me and he said, I just want you to read this. And that's when my mind shifted from, wow, I could live with this illness and be public. Not that that was my original plan, but I knew I had been in I'm involved in charities and volunteer groups in the kids' school. And there's so many different things I touch that when I was gone for 21 days in 2018, it's where's Lyndsey? What's she doing? And so I knew
What's going on?
so I knew there was going to be some capacity of this that would become public. And that was the magazine article that changed everything for me.
What did you feel when you read that?
I felt hope. I felt like I could finally be myself and still work at it and still invest the time I do into my recovery, but I could do it publicly without shame. And for the people who did want to shame, mental illness touches 1 in 5 people. If it's not me, if it's not you, it's somebody we love. And I just wanted people to know they didn't have to be alone, because this illness does kill people. And I didn't want anyone to feel like, despite feeling worthless and alone and shameful and depressed and potentially even suicidal, I didn't want anyone to feel like there wasn't an outlet and there wasn't a way to come from the darkest days and find some amount of light for the rest of your life. And that's all I've tried to do.
Well, you've given so many people hope, and you continually do that. And with your growth mindset, you're always open. A lot of people wouldn't have read that article, even if their husband would have asked them to, and they wouldn't have come out and spoken about it, because after all, we're taught a little bit as young children to always look good and be right. Sit there, don't talk, act the way you should, shake people's hands, say hello, look them in the eye. We're just giving commands over and over and over again. And we somewhat condition our kids to look good and be right. What do you say to someone that comes to you that finally opens up because they're confident that you'll keep it confidential, that they're struggling?
I try to relate to some part of my story, and it's not like every day has been easy to take medication. I didn't want to. I would rather live a little more organically, to be honest. There's days that I go to my therapist and I'm like, oh, because I know I'm going to work at it and I'm going to take it seriously, and so I'm mentally drained after that. But I will tell you, my kids have been my greatest medication. And that was the one card that Billy never played that he knew he could, which was, Lyndsey, if you don't take this seriously this time, it's going to impact our children. And, he could do because in 2013, when I was first diagnosed, I basically walked out of there and was like, we're not talking to anybody about this, lock and key, it's under the rug. 2018, it happens. I have a 3.5 and a 6-month-old at home, and I spent 21 days away from them. And I remember when they came to visit me on day 14 of 21, they were laughing and hugging me and playing, but they also weren't looking at me. They were only looking at their dad. And that cut me. And that awakened my soul more than anything has ever done in life, which was, I better take this seriously. I better take care of myself seriously. Because my kids are never going to gain a presence of me that they deserve the most. And so much of what I've been able to build, or what I'm able to do, is I can multitask and do 77 different things at one time, but it comes at the expense of the people I'm around and the people I love the most. And so even though professionally it's been successful, personally it's been really harming. And so I tell people that story, that I don't ever remember rocking my daughter to sleep. She never wanted to sleep on my chest growing up, even as a little one. And I think part of that was because my heart was always racing and I was always trying to bounce to the next thing. And so now we have this super connected relationship that, had I continued on that path, it wouldn't be anywhere near what it is with either of my 2 children.
I love what you're saying, because you had to change on the inside before it showed up externally on the outside. I think a lot of times people think, well, if they change, then I'll change. It's all your fault. And they point the finger, not realizing 3 fingers are pointing back at them. That one moment when you said, hey, it's up to me, did everything instantly change or did you still have to work at it?
I still had to work at it. I still do have to work at it. My cell phone, like a lot of ours, it dings, it pings, it buzzes, it rings, all day long. And so I have to be so intentional to go on do not disturb. Or when I pick the kids up from school, if anyone tries to reach me within those first 20 minutes, I'm not available anymore. I want to hear about their day. I want to soak in the time with them. And so I would say for anyone who's struggling or knows someone who's struggling, the word intent has to be pretty high up there. And you have to be willing to do the uncomfortable, or as I often say, that temporary inconvenience will lead to permanent improvement. And I also will tell you, I haven't made it either. I don't sit on this podcast and act like I've got all the answers, because I'm still learning and still growing and still changing, but I'm not afraid of change because I'm walking in a truth that I'd never known before this.
Well, the thing I love about you is the fact that you're always evolving, you're always reinventing, you're always working on yourself, which if all of us did that, like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, right? When you want to approach somebody, let's say you know someone that you know is challenged, is struggling, and they're putting it under the rug. What's something that maybe you could say or actions that you could take that would help them understand it's okay?
I go back to that John Gordon quote of love, serve, care, right? If you love them enough to identify it, if you care about them enough to want a better life for them, and if you serve them in a way that says, I'm going to help your future by being present with you, I don't think you can go wrong. Now, where do I think you can go wrong? I'm going to approach my aunt that I think is struggling at a family Christmas with 37 people also in the living room, right?
Yeah,
I'll
not a good thing.
I'll often tell I'm better in movement. So anytime I need to have a conversation that might be quote unquote hard, I don't do well sitting in a coffee. My mother-in-law and I had a conversation last week, and I showed up to her house and I said, hey, can you go for a walk? And she was like, nope, you're sitting down. And that's when I was like, oh man, she knows me well. So I think just approaching people in a space that's comfortable for them. When I get out of the hospital, all I want to do is walk. And so I'll have close girlfriends go for walks with me. Billy and I walk every morning now as just a routine. I know that's a really safe space for me to bring up stuff. But I think if you do it in a way of just loving, serving, and caring, you cannot go wrong. And will it be met with, oh my gosh, thanks for loving, serving, caring for me. I can't wait to tackle my issues. No. The other thing I tell people is use my name, Google me, say, hey, I listened to this Lyndsey chick on a podcast, and maybe there's some things from her story that could help you. There's a ton of articles and resources out there. And that's all I've tried to do is just normalize it for people who are too scared to honestly admit that that's their normal.
Well, if you're listening to this podcast or you're watching it on YouTube, make certain that you do share it with others, even if you don't think they have a problem, because I think in essence, we all have one thing we've got to do. That's work on ourselves. Now, you are in your uncomfortable zone most of the time as an athlete, as going through this, then coming out publicly and sharing it. Now, with everything that you do every single day, making certain that you're consistent in what it is, taking your pills, doing whatever, I should say, medication. I'm not sure if it's pills or what it is, but the medication that you take. What advice do you have for all of us listening to get outside that comfortable zone and to stay outside of it so you can actually grow in life?
I think start small. I think we all think we're going to listen to this one podcast, which this one will change people's lives, right, Diana? But we all think like there's that one podcast or that one book or that one workout fad that as long as we do that one big thing, it's going to happen overnight. And I don't think that's true. I think we can evolve every day. And I think our small steps are are big wins. And so small steps for me are putting my phone on do not disturb for an hour a day, taking a nap, turning on the candle, going for a walk with a friend. Things that, again, on paper and on LinkedIn don't showcase me as a speaker or a leader in any way. It's just, we're meant to be, I think this is one of my favorite quotes to share in talks. We're not human doers, we're human beings. And the more we can feed our souls to be good human beings, the more the doing just gets easier. But it's the proverbial professional ladder. You've done an amazing job with Keller Williams over the years and writing your book. And, it's like the next. The more I chase the next, the more I ignore the now. And that's what I'm trying to see as a win every day, rather than, going on and on and on.
In the book, I talk about the 4 energies of success. And one of those energies is being in the present moment. And that's why I believe your energy attracted everyone, including John Maxwell at that event with 3,500 people. Here, you were attractive to people. He spoke with you. I watched you. And it's the fact that you just have this this energy oozing out of you, that whoever you were speaking with, you gave them your undivided attention. Everything was going on out here, and you looked at them, you cared about them. And I think that's almost a lost art. When you said about leadership, I think you're a fabulous leader, because first we have to lead ourselves before we can ever lead anyone else. And that, Lyndsey, you do exceptionally well. I know there's so much more that I want to ask you. Our time is drawing to an end. I'd love for you to share what is the one thing that you want every single person to take away from this podcast.
If you're like my kids and you haven't listened to a thing I've said for the last couple minutes, is just an attitude of gratitude. And no matter what we're dealing, no matter what we're facing, we don't have a right to the hand that we're dealt, but we have an obligation to play the heck out of the cards we're given. And I think I just try to, as much as possible, find gratefulness and gratitude in everything I do and every challenge that comes my way, because we do only get one shot here. And if I got dealt the mental illness hand, at least it's probably physically better than other illnesses that I could have been dealt. And so how do I make the most of it for myself, the people I care about, and other people that can be touched? That's my biggest message. And it's something I'm going to make my kids listen to this podcast, because we're working on the attitude of gratitude at home, too.
Well, one thing I do want them then to know, as that Dr. Amen did a research study where he brought 30 people into a room. He had them write down for 5 minutes things they were grateful for. And then 30 minutes later, they did brain scans. The entire brain was lit up. The area that you take in information, the logical side, the emotions of joy and happiness, the cerebellum where your intuition and creativity live, everything lit up, ready to go to work. Then they took them back in and they said, what if? What if your dog died? What if you had a terrible illness? What if? And they did brain scans. Nothing was lit up other than anxiety, stress, depression, that emotional side of the brain, and the emotions that we deal with that we have to help in some way. And so just seeing those brain scans every day, the staff and we start out with 3 things we're grateful for, and then the 3 things that we will work on that day. So I want to challenge everyone listening to this. Thank you for bringing it to our attention, Lyndsey. We so appreciate everything that you've talked about. I want to challenge you to, before your feet hit the ground, think of 3 things that you're grateful for, and start your day with the attitude of gratitude. And if your kids are listening to this, I'm going to challenge them as well to do that. I look forward to you and I having a great friendship. I want to get to know you better. And I'm sure that most of our podcast listeners want that as well. So tell us, how do we stay in touch with you?
Yes, so I'm pretty active on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm working on doing more and doing better with those accounts. But I want to take this time to thank you. You were you were a gift of grace and a gift of love to sit next to, in a space where we were complete strangers 3 weeks ago. And now here we are doing a podcast. And I think you are just a wealth of knowledge and of goodness. And so I really appreciate you as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So do I just go to Instagram with your name? Is that how I find you, Lyndsey?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll put that up on the podcast for everyone. I love what you said, to love and to serve. I mean, that's what it's all about. You may not love the actions. Please always love the person. Thank you so much. If you're listening to this, join us next Tuesday when you too will learn how to become more through other people's lives.
In your life, you deserve to be more, do more, have more, and give more. And now the Becoming More podcast with Dianna Kokoszka.